While writing the species, please be careful, don't start it with the capital letter because we know that the species always begins with a small letter. So the plasticity is nothing but the ability of the plant to follow different pathways in response to environmental stresses or phases of different forms of life that they exhibit. Sometimes what happens, you read half a question and you write the answer which will go wrong. So read the questions properly. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to today's session on the model question paper discussion regarding first PUC biology. I am Dr. Divya, biology faculty, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Mysuru, Temple of Excellence. So in the previous session, that is session 1 of this model question paper discussion, we had discussed about the model question paper in detail, how exactly the questions appear, and also we discussed about how to write the answers for 1 mark and 2 marks. In today's session, we shall discuss about the answer writing for part C, that is 3 marks, and part D, section 1 and section 2, that is 5 marks. So moving on to part C. So the part C, there are 10 questions out of which you need to answer any 5. So here it is 15 marks. So this whole part is for 15 marks because it is 3 mark question and 5 you need to answer out of this. So the first question goes like this: write the taxonomic categories of mango plant. So when they ask taxonomic categories of mango plant, you need to write according to the hierarchy. So starting from the kingdom. So kingdom, the division, the class, order, family, genus and species. While writing the species, please be careful, don't start it with the capital letter because we know that the species always begins with a small letter. So much you write, you will get 3 marks for this. So they might have divided it as quarter marks for each of these hierarchies. So that is why everything you need to write, that is there in the textbook. So moving on to the next question, they have asked list any 3 modifications that enable birds to adjust to the aerial mode of life. So there are different types of modifications a bird exhibits. So under that, any 3 which you find it easy, you can write about that. So you can write about the forelimbs, then you can write about the shape of the body, and you can write about the bones. The bones are filled with air cavities, right? So they have hollow bones, or if you forget, that is pneumatic bones. They are called pneumatic bones. If you forget the word pneumatic bones, you can also write it as they have hollow bones. Like that, 3 marks you write. So each point will carry 1 mark. You will get 3 marks here. So moving on to question number 28. So briefly explain the anatomical features of Dorsey ventral leaf. So here you know that you have a diagram in your textbook regarding this dorsiventral leaf, right? Wherein you need to write about the epidermis, the mesophyll cells, then the vascular bundles and all that. Same thing you will be writing here as well. So starting with the internal mesophyll tissue that is there, which is covered by the upper epidermis, or you can write it in points. First you can write externally the leaf is covered by an external epidermis which is made up of parenchymatous cells. That will be the first point. Barrel-shaped cell, parenchymatous cells will be the first point. Next point you can write inner to the, it is not necessary that you write exactly how I have shown the answer here. You can put it in your own words. Next point you can write below the epidermis is present a layer of mesophyll cells which is nothing but the cortex, which consists of the parenchyma cells, that is the spongy parenchyma and the palisade parenchyma. And next you can write about not just that, on the epidermis there is presence of trichomes, and some of the leaves on the epidermis they are covered with cuticle, and some of the leaves they don't have. On the upper epidermis there is no presence of stomata. The stomata is usually present in the lower epidermis. So all that different points are there. In that, any 3 or 4 points if you write it is enough. So many points I have mentioned here. This is for 5 marks. But any 3 points if you write, 3 or 4 points if you write from this, it will fetch you 3 marks. Next, moving on to question number 29. Mention the location of the following connective tissue. As I told you how they divide the question, right? They divide the question as 1 mark and 1 mark. What they have asked, mention the location of the following connective tissue, that is the location of dense regular connective tissue, dense irregular connective tissue and the cartilage. So if you write their location, these three, each will carry 1 mark. So therefore you will get 3 marks here. Next, moving on to the next question. Here also they have split the question into 3 sub-questions. Mention the function of GLUT4, antibody and collagen. So these 3 you write just their function, one function if you write, it will fetch you 3 marks. So you forget, you don't know about one function, rest 2 you know, then you will get 2 marks. Only 3 if you write, then you will get 3 marks. Because here also it is divided as 1 mark, 1 mark and 1 mark. So that is how they can ask, split the questions and ask. It is not exactly compulsory that they need to ask 3 marks, means at a stretch they'll ask only 3 mark question. They can split it into either 2 mark and 1 mark, or they can split it into 1 mark and 1 mark. Next question, briefly explain the criteria for essentiality of an element. So there are 5 to 6 different criteria that they have given in the textbook, right? Any 3 if you write it is enough, any 3 criteria. That is why a mineral element is considered as an essential element. 3 criteria if you write, you'll get 3 marks here. So 3 points if you write. So 1 mark, 1 mark, 1 mark, 3 marks. Moving on to the next one. Here they have split the question into 2 questions. The first question is for 1 mark. This question they have given it as 1 mark. Then one more question is there, it is for 2 marks. So answer the following. With reference to plant development, state the meaning of plasticity. So they have asked, what does plasticity mean? So plasticity is nothing but the ability of the plant to follow different pathways in response to environmental stresses or phases of different forms of life that they exhibit, or life cycles that they exhibit. So that is nothing but plasticity here. So you write about what is the exact meaning of plasticity, you write the definition of plasticity, it will fetch you 1 mark. Second question that they have asked, it is a 2 mark question here. So they have asked, differentiate between differentiation and de-differentiation. So there are 3 types of differentiation, right? One is differentiation, the other one is de-differentiation, then we have re-differentiation. So anyone can be asked here. So here they have asked particularly differentiation and de-differentiation, because it is about differentiating. Make it into 2 columns, and I told you because it is 2 marks, at least 2 points are important. Here points are not there in your PU textbook. Just they have given the definition, like what is differentiation, what is de-differentiation, just that they have given. So what you can do is, they would have given example in the textbook, right? So write the example, which means it will be of 2 marks. So 2 points under this, it will fetch you 2 marks. Next, moving on to part C. Again here, 3 mark question. I told you they can ask a easy diagram to draw for 3 marks. It is not that only for 5 marks they'll ask you to draw a diagram. So here they have given, draw a neat label diagram of the human respiratory system. So this diagram has been taken from the NCERT textbook, and I want all of you to prefer the NCERT textbook itself, that is prescribed by your respective boards, because corrections of the diagram will be based on, as well as the labeling will be based on the NCERT textbook diagram itself. So you can draw the diagram of the lungs, and here any 3 important or 4 to 5 important labels, because labeling the diagram is very, very important. If you draw the diagram very neatly and you don't label it, then it will not fetch you any marks here. So important one, say for example, your trachea is very, very important. Then mentioning about alveoli is very, very important. Bronchiole is very, very important. The membrane of the lung, which is called as the pleural membrane, is very, very important. So 4 or 5 markings you do, it will easily fetch you 3 marks here. So next, moving on to the next question. Here also again they have asked for a diagram. Diagrammatically represent the structure of nephron. So this is a nephron. Nephron is nothing but the unit of a kidney, right? If they ask a nephron, don't draw the structure of the kidney. Nephron is a unit of kidney. Thousands together of nephrons are present in the kidney. One nephron you will be drawing here. So you can draw, you can write about the glomerulus, you can write the Bowman's capsule, then you can write the Henle's loop, which is there. This is the Henle's endless loop. That is, if you forget to write ascending loop and descending loop, you can just mention it as endless loop. Or if you need to divide it into two markings, you can mention particularly as descending limb of endless loop and ascending limb of endless loop. So 4 to 5 markings you can do. Then you can do the distal convoluted tubule, all these different markings. At least 4 or 5 labeling is very, very important for a diagram carrying 3 marks. So be very, very careful while drawing the diagrams. And don't draw diagrams very small. Let it be big. Let it be visible neatly for the person who is correcting your paper. So moving on to the next question. What are joints? So here they have given 2 questions. What are joints? Mention any 2 types of joints. So here, if you write what are joints, you will get 1 mark. Mention any 2 types. If you mention any 2 types of joints, you will get 1 mark plus 1 mark. That is 1 mark for each type of joint that you mention. So you can see here, write what are joints, write the definition, write what is joints. Then types of joints. There are 2 types. 2 types, if you write it is enough. Any 2 types they have asked. So there are fibrous joints, cartilaginous and synovial joints. Any 2 you write, it will fetch you 2 marks. So therefore 2 plus 1, it is 3 mark question. Next, moving on to part D. So in part D, we have section 1 and section 2. So under section 1 also carries 5 marks. Section 2 also carries 5 marks. So here section 1, they'll give you 8 questions. Out of the 8, you need to answer any 4. And this section is for 20 marks. So moving on to the first question. So here, while writing the answers, please write the question numbers very, very neatly. The examiner will not have, or the person evaluating your paper will not have the patience to search for which question you have written which mark, because in a day he'll be correcting more than 50 papers, right? So that is why you need to make it easy for him. Don't lose marks. You write everything neatly and you don't write the question number for that. He'll just put a 0 for that. So that is why please write the question numbers very, very correctly. No need of writing the questions. Don't waste your time writing the questions. Just write the question number. Say for example, the question number 36, then go on writing the answer. That is how you need to write. If you forget the main also, it is fine. Why? Because the question has been given, the whole question paper from 1 to 50, they have given the numbers, right? It is not like first main 1 to 15, again second main 1 to 10. Like that they have not done. If it was like that, then you had to write the main, first main, second main. But here, to make it again easy for you, they have given continuous numbering for the question. So please write the questions number very, very carefully. So talking about question number 36 here, describe the salient features of pteridophytes. So any 5 to 6 salient features, write about the pteridophytes. So each of that will carry 1 mark. So here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 you write, it will give you 5 marks. Any 5 points, 5 to 6 points, safer side, write 6 points. So 5 to 6 points, it will give you 5 marks. Next question, assign the following animals to their respective phyla. If you can see here, they have given 5 questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have given the name of 5 animals. Edamissa, Ascaris, Phyla, Asterias, Belanoglossus. Now your work is, for each of these, you have to write to which phyla they belong. If you write all these correctly to which phyla they belong, then you will get 5 marks, because each of these carries 1 mark each. So like this also they can divide and ask the questions. Next, moving on to the next question. Write the floral formula and floral diagram. Again here, what you will do in a hurry, you will just read the question as write the floral diagram. You'll forget about reading that there was floral formula there. Read very carefully. They have asked for both floral formula as well as floral diagram of family Solanaceae. So you need to draw the floral diagram. What all should be included? You should include 5 whorls compulsory should be there, because the flower will contain 5 whorls, right? So the outer whorl which is there, you need to draw the calyx, that is the sepals, and If the sepals are united, you need to put this particular symbol saying that this sepal is connected to this sepal. Then you have to write about, look into the aestivation as well. So that is also very, very important. Next, writing about the radial nature of the flower. What is the symmetry of the flower? This flower is exhibiting, it is actinomorphic, right? So it is actinomorphic. So you have to mention this symbol is for actinomorphic. All this has to be very neatly mentioned. Next, moving on to the second whorl. Second whorl, if you can see, this is for petals. Corolla. This is for corolla. The outer whorl was for calyx. This is gamosepalous because it is fused. It is gamosepalous. Next, moving on to corolla. Corolla is also fused. It is gamopetalous. Next, fused means I told you, you have to do a marking like this. Next, talking about the anthers. How many? That is the inner to the corolla is present the anther. How many anthers are there? There are 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 anthers. Each anther is attached to the corolla. You have to draw it like this. If it is not attached, you can just freely draw it. No need of drawing this line, but it is attached in the case of Solanaceae, so you need to draw it. Next, moving into the inner, that is the female reproductive part, wherein you need to draw the ovary. It is bilocular, and how many bilocular means 2 locules are there, and in each locule 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 ovules are there. This is how you need to draw. So this one correctly, neatly, if you draw, it will fetch you good marks. Otherwise, you will lose marks. Next here, mentioning the floral formula. This is a bisexual flower, right? So bisexual means you will write it like this. That is, male and female both are present in the same flower itself. It is bisexual. Next, talking about the calyx. Calyx, the symbol for calyx is or sepal is K. You have to write K. How many calyx are there? 5 calyx are there. The calyx are fused to one another, or you write the sepals are fused to one another. That is why you write it in a bracket. Next, what you do? You go in for writing the corolla. Corolla symbol is C. Again, corolla, how many petals are there? 5 are there. They are free or are they fused? They are fused. So you'll write it in a bracket. Next, moving on to the male reproductive part, andrecium. So it is represented in the symbol A. So you'll write it as A. In A, again, how many anthers are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 anthers are there. Are the anthers fused? The anthers here, don't get confused, the anthers here are not fused. If the anthers was fused, you should have written it as like this. But here, the anthers are not fused. Only thing is, anthers are separated, but each anther is fused to the petal. Anthers are not fused to each other. Understand my point? Anthers are not fused to each other, but the anthers here are fused to the petal. So that is why, how do you write it? You write it as a connection here like this, because anthers are fused to the corolla. So note the difference between this one and this one. Understood, right? So this is wrong. Don't write it like this. So this is how you need to write it. Next, talking about the gynoecium, that is the ovary. Ovary superior. Therefore, ovary superior means the petals, the sepals, everything rises from below the ovary. Therefore, the ovary is placed at the top position. Therefore, you'll put a line down here, means ovary superior. If it was inferior, you would have written it like this. Right? So that is how. Next here, how many locules are there? 2. And they are fused. So this is how you write it. So 2 locules means 2 carpels. 2 gynoeciums are there. That is how you write this. So this is about the floral formula and the floral diagrams. So much you write correctly, it will fetch you 5 marks. So moving on to the next question. Again here, draw a neat label diagram of the elementary canal of earthworm. Don't get confused here. In your structural and anatomical features of animal, that chapter that is there, structural and morphological features of animals. So there they have given different cockroach, earthworm and all that. Don't get confused with the diagram. So here they have asked about the elementary canal. So elementary canal means you have to write about the digestive system of the earthworm. So draw the diagram. There are lots of What is that? Labeling here, whichever you find it easy. Say for example, mouth, that is easy. Then buccal chamber, you can write about that. You can write the buccal chamber, then you can mention about the esophagus, then the pharynx, then the gizzard, then the stomach, then the intestinal coccus, then the lymph glands. So any 6 to 8 labeling you do, it will fetch you 5 marks. So this is about the elementary kennel of earthworm. Next, moving on to the next question, that is, here they have divided the question into 3 questions. So 3 questions you need to answer. They have asked you to mention one function of each for chloroplast, mitochondria and cytoskeleton. One function you write, it will fetch you 5 marks. So what is chloroplast here? What is the function of the chloroplast you need to write? What is the function of the mitochondria you need to write? What is the function of the cytoskeleton you need to write? So one function you mention, it will fetch you 5 marks. So sometimes you might think they should have given this for 3 marks, right? But they have already mentioned it. Any one function of these 3 you write will give you 5 marks. So one function you write, it will fetch you 5 marks. Next, moving on to the next question. Answer the following. Draw a diagrammatic view of the cell cycle. So cell cycle, you have to mention about the different phases here. So this comes under the cell division chapter, right? So here 2 questions, they are divided into 2 questions. So this is for 4 mark and this is for 1 mark. 2 questions they have given. First question is draw a diagrammatic view of cell cycle. So this is there in your NCERT textbook. The same thing I have taken here. So you have to mention about the G1 phase, the S phase and the G2 phase. After that comes the meiosis, wherein you have the prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase and the cytokinesis. So much you need to mention about that. So much you need to mention. Then one more question is that don't forget about the other question here. They have asked, in which stage of cell cycle DNA synthesis takes place? So in which stage? It is in the S phase. It is in the S phase that the synthesis of DNA takes place. One word. In one word you answer here, you will get 1 mark. So therefore 4 plus 1, 5 marks. Moving on to the next question. Explain the pathways of water movement in the roots. So here you need to explain the pathways. First you need to write the 2 types of pathways. There are 2 types of pathways involved in water movement in the roots. One is the apoplast pathway and the other one is symplast pathway. Then you need to write about the apoplast pathway and then you need to write about the symplast pathway. Here it looks like very small, right? It looks very small. So it is always better, please draw a diagram. Here I have not put a diagram, but you can include the diagram of apoplast and symplast pathway. That is in your chapter Transport and Plants. They have given this particular diagram in the NCERT textbook wherein they have given apoplast and symplast pathway, right? So you can draw that diagram as well, which will fetch you easy marks. So moving on to the next question. Here they have given schematically represent Kelvin cycle. So Kelvin cycle, that is there. You need to schematically represent it. You need to write everything. Where the carbon dioxide is taken, how much, where the ATP gets converted into ADP, where ADP gets converted into ATP. Then all that you need to write. You need to write the biochemicals that are involved in this particular pathway. So much you write, you will get 5 marks very easily. Next question, section 2. In this part D, section 2. Here also it is all our 5 mark question. Here any 3. They have given 6 questions. Out of the 6 you need to answer any 3. So first question, draw a neat label diagram of the plant cell. This should be very easy for you because you had it right from your high school, drawing the plant cell and the animal cell, right? But here don't draw the same thing. What is there in the NCERT? Please prefer drawing that. So here you can mention the, you can draw everything. There is no need for drawing all the cells. Not possible for you. No need of drawing all the cell organelles. Whichever cell organelles you feel like labeling, that if you draw is also sufficient. You can write about the nucleus, the cell wall, the cell membrane, then about the mitochondria, the Golgi apparatus, the ribosomes, the cytoplasm, all those different markings you need to do here. So this will fetch you 5 marks. Next, moving on to the next question. Write the schematic representation of citric acid cycle. So citric acid cycle also you need to write starting from how the pyruvate, and don't forget to write the It is a 3-carbon compound. It is a 2-carbon compound. Here 6-carbon compound, 5-carbon. All these, and wherever the NAD gets converted into NADH plus and all that, you need to write. Everything should be mentioned very, very carefully. And spellings also, please write it carefully, because sometimes what happens, it may give rise to a different chemical name if you write wrong spelling. So that is why be careful about writing the spelling. So this schematic representation will fetch you 5 marks. Moving on to the next question. So here they have divided into 5 sub questions. What they have asked: name the plant growth regulators responsible for the following physiological function. So, for bolting, which is the plant growth regulator; for apical dominance, which one; for production of new leaves and chloroplast cells, which one; for closure of stomata, which one; for fruit ripening, which one. So, each of these you write the answer. It will give you 1 mark for each of these, therefore fetching you 5 marks. Just in one word. So in the question itself, they have mentioned all these. So you don't have to write all these. What you can do is you can just write it as 1. So question number 46, write it as 1. It is bolting. No need of wasting your time writing it again. Second one is auxin. Like this, if you go on writing also, it is enough. No need of writing the question again and then writing the answer for it. Moving on to question number 47. So here they have given, explain the process of chemical digestion of carbohydrate in different parts of the human digestive system. Now here read the question very, very carefully. They didn't ask you to write the general digestion process. Digestion, what are the different macromolecules that are involved in digestion? It has to get digested from the food, that is carbohydrates, the proteins and the lipids, right? In this question, particularly they have asked only about carbohydrate digestion. So carbohydrate digestion, from where it will start? From the mouth itself it will start, right? So that is why you have to write from the mouth. In mouth, how the carbohydrate digestion will take place. Next, move into the pharynx. In the pharynx, how it will occur. Then what will happen in the esophagus, what happens in the stomach. Then all that you need to write. After stomach, what is there? Small intestine. So much if you write it is enough. Accessory organs and all I have written, but instead of writing all that, there and there itself you can write. So when it enters into the intestine, the accessory organs, that is the pancreas and the liver or the gallbladder, will secrete certain enzymes which will help in digestion of the carbohydrate. So all that in detail you need to write, starting from the mouth up till the, forget about pharynx. Pharynx you can leave. You can write about the mouth, you can write about the esophagus, then you can write about the small intestine, because it is in these 3 parts of the alimentary canal that the digestion of the carbohydrate actually takes place. So much you write, it will fetch you 5 marks. Okay. Large intestine and all, I have given everything here, but no need of writing, because in large intestine digestion will not occur. Carbohydrate digestion in mouth, in the stomach, then in the small intestine. These 3, if you write it, is enough. Explain them properly. So moving on to the next question, describe the events of cardiac cycle. So you need to write the events. Here I have given in the form of a paragraph. If you look, you can see that it doesn't look good, right? So please write it in the form of points. Now I'll show you how you can split it in the form of a points. So the cardiac cycle, first write the cardiac cycle has 2 phases. One is the diastole phase and the systole phase. Then write the side heading, diastole phase. After writing the side heading, under the diastole phase, what all events will come, write it in the form of points. Then write the side heading, systole phase. Then under systole phase, what all events will come, write it in the form of a point. So that is how you can write it. Write it just like this in the form of paragraph will not look nice. I just wanted to show you how it will look, so that you don't write it in your exam. So please write it in the form of points, as I just told you now. So moving on to the next question. Explain the generation and condition of the nerve impulse. Here also the nerve impulse is the some mechanical. Write the definition. What exactly is the nerve impulse? Then write, there are 2 phases that are involved in the generation of nerve impulses. So resting membrane potential and action membrane. After that, you have to write about that, the steps, write it in the form of steps. then it will fetch you 5 marks. Any 5 steps, 5 points you write, it is enough. Next, moving on to the next question. Write one function each for the following hormones in humans. So, one function each. They have already mentioned the hormones, that is melatonin, insulin, testosterone, progesterone and thymosin. So, here each of these will carry 1 mark. So, therefore, 5 marks for this question. So, one function, each of these one function if you write, it will fetch you 5 marks. So, this is about the 5 mark writing for this particular question. So, that is how they can divide the 5 mark question into 1 mark like that. They can divide and ask it as a 5 mark. They can divide it as 3 and 2. They can divide it as 2, 2 and 1. So, that is how you need to learn accordingly. So, please keep your blueprint and read for the exam. So, this was about the model question paper discussion. So, I hope you have an idea now how the model question paper looks and how exactly you need to write the answers. Please read the questions very carefully. That is very important. Sometimes what happens, you read half a question and you write the answer which will go wrong. So, read the questions properly, do your exams well and study well. So, this was about this particular session. Thank you.